You have to know this. The fact that I'm here matters. The fact that you're there matters. This is no accident. None of us are.
If you do not have style, you just say, well, here I am, as a human being. How can I express myself?
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
There is no way around. You have to jump.
And we are calling it iPhone.
نريدها قومة ونهضة إسلامية.
I have a dream.
It's about yes we can.
بسم الله نبدأ، وعلى بركة الله تبحر سفينة أصحاب السلطة في موسمها الثاني في عاصمة النفوذ والسلطة والمال نيويورك، لنلتقي بشخص ارتبط اسمه لما يزيد عن 100 عام بأصحاب السلطة والنفوذ والقوة. ستيڤ فوربز، مالك ورئيس تحرير مجلة فوربز العالمية، والتي تأسست منذ عام 1917 لما يتجاوز 100 عام. قدرت قيمتها بما يقارب $1,000,000,000 قبل عامين. لن نقابل ستيڤ فوربز لأنه مجرد مالك ورئيس تحرير لمجلة فوربز، فهو من خاض معارك عدة في مجالات مختلفة. على سبيل المثال هو من نافس في انتخابات الرئاسية الأمريكية لمرتين، وهو صاحب نظريات استثنائية في عالم الاقتصاد.
He and the country, ستيڤ فوربز.
ستيڤ فوربز.
ستيڤ فوربز.
ستيڤ فوربز.
ستيڤ فوربز.
ستيڤ فوربز.
Mr. ستيڤ فوربز.
I was campaigning for the Republican nomination for the presidency of the United States.
Mr. Forbes, thank you for giving us this chance again. I wanted to start where Forbes started in 1917. Can you tell us how it all started with your grandfather?
Well, my grandfather was born in Scotland, one of 10 children, only had a grade school education, but he always wanted to be a business writer. And so he taught himself what used to be called shorthand, where he could take notes very quickly, learned the trade in Scotland, then first went to South Africa and then came to this country because this was the biggest market in the world. He arrived in New York and off the boat, as we say here, had a hard time finding a job, but showed an entrepreneurial spirit, recognizing that if he did what everyone else did, he wouldn't get very far. So what he did when he didn't get a job initially was he went to an editor and said, I'll work for you for free and show you my worth, and I hope then you'll hire me. Well, he had no idea whether the editor would use his free labor and then kick him out, but he got the job. But my grandfather was so full of energy that he went to another editor using a different name and got a job there. And probably one of the happiest moments in his life was when the two editors got into an argument as to who had the best business reporter.
Who will win Forbes?
Well, it was my grandfather in both cases. But so he wrote about entrepreneurs, but he wanted to not just write about people, he wanted to start his own business. So in 1917, he launched Forbes, raised the capital for it, and from the very first issue, he said, the purpose of business is to produce happiness, not to pile up money. He also liked to say you'll learn more about a business looking at the head knocker, that's what he called CEOs, rather than the balance sheet, because people make the difference. So he had that entrepreneurial itch. The thing worked, and we had a lot of ups and downs since then, but we've always believed in entrepreneurial capitalism. We've been compared to a drama critic. We love it when something is done right. We dislike it when things are done wrong, but we always believe that through entrepreneurial capitalism, free markets, free enterprise, people have the best chance to recognize their talents, develop their talents, and the nice thing is your success is other people's success. It's not a zero-sum game.
Mr. Forbes, we always hear this from rich people or businessmen that business shouldn't lead for more money. Business should lead to more happiness. But when you go between the people and ask them, what does money represent to you? They'll always say happiness. So isn't it the same? Should any business lead to to more money because this is what will give you happiness by the end of the day?
Well, the key thing to having a fulfilling life is the ability to have a chance, as Lincoln put it, to improve your lot in life. Learn skills, get setbacks along the way, but then picking yourself up and moving higher, earning more as you get more skills, and being able to live a better life. And we believe that in free markets, that is the best way to achieve that, where you're not oppressed by government, where what you earn, what you achieve is not stolen away by others. And so with the rule, within the boundaries of the rule of law, you can have a chance to develop your talents, and that's the key thing. In too many societies, you have so many obstacles from government and other things that you're like held back. We want to be able to have people to move forward, because when people move forward, everyone experiences a higher standard of living. So when a part of the world is impoverished, that hurts them, but also in essence hurts all of us.
You're right. I promise you we'll be talking about your values in the economy and your solutions. But let us go back to Forbes more. When do you think the time where Forbes became the famous Forbes, the important Forbes? Yes, we know that it started since 1917, but what was the main time where Forbes became that value?
Well, I have to, before I answer your question, I have to note that 1917 was the same year as the Russian Revolution, when the communists took over in Russia.
You're right.
And I think my grandfather would have been very proud that his creation outlasted Lenin's creation. And but in terms of Forbes' history, it had a great success in the 1920s, was nearly destroyed by the Great Depression. But after World War II, we reorganized the company. Well, my father did that. And it was in the 1950s and 60s that we became more and more associated with entrepreneurs, with the better life, with moving ahead, taking risks. If you get set back, you have a chance to get the second act. So it was really in the 1960s, I think, that we achieved the eminence, and then more and more around the world. You know, people talk about working classes. There's also an entrepreneurial class, people who want to start with very little, who want to have a chance to move up. And I think they understand that we appreciate what they're trying to do in life, which is why the Forbes name has this resonance throughout the world.
That would be my next question, which is that usually family business, Forbes is a family business, doesn't last for more than 3 generations. 100 years, as you said, is a record, and more, hopefully, in the next years, maybe with your daughter. But what made Forbes stick to each other, or still exists till today with this high values, and this values in both ways, economically and also the values of beliefs?
The key thing is what a man named Peter Drucker, who was a business advisor, wrote books about business that American business schools, many of them still use today. He once said that every company should always ask itself, what is your purpose? What is it you are trying to achieve? And if you understand your purpose, then when the means to achieve the purpose change, you're not thrown for confusion and fall by the wayside. So take the rise of the internet, which has destroyed many print publications in this country. And we recognized, because we had that sense of purpose, the fact that the internet rose up didn't mean we were going to cease to exist. It meant we found new ways to achieve our purpose. So more than 20 years ago, when we started Forbes.com, we put it in a separate building, separate staff, separate reporting. It reported to me and to my brother, not to the print side, because we recognized that when something new comes along, the existing, what we call the incumbents, are going to try to use it for their immediate purposes. So we wanted this new baby to have a chance to reach a muscular adulthood. And so it was a good thing, because a lot of print publishers thought that putting the printed page online was electronic publishing. It isn't. It's like when movies started over 100 years ago. Some people thought if you filmed a stage play, that was a feature film. No, it was a different medium. So the internet was a different medium. And so Forbes.com not only used material from Forbes magazine, but created its own material, had its own content. So we combined the two after 10 years, and today most of our revenue comes online. But
Correct me if I'm not mistaken, 70% maybe now?
over 70.
Over 70.
Over 70% of our revenue. We have, depending on whose numbers you use, some 80 million unique visitors a month on Forbes.com.
Wow.
And in content creation, we still have 1,000 printed articles a year in Forbes magazine, which are online as well. But online we have over 1,700 contracted contributors, people with expertise in different areas who write for Forbes. So online, Forbes.com, we have over 110,000 pieces a year. So same purpose, but the means to achieve it have fundamentally changed.
Before talking about the future or the current status of Forbes, let me go back to what does Forbes stand for? Forbes was one of the first, or is the first of its type in the US. What is the unique point where you feel that Forbes give as an information for the public?
First, our approach is different. We consider business people to be heroes, not criminals. And so if we find somebody does something wrong, we'll point it out and go after them. But we assume that the purpose of business is a noble one. Yes, you achieve success, but your success is providing something that somebody else wants. You have to persuade somebody to buy what you're offering, which means you have to be attentive to their wants and needs. That is a moral purpose. And we are, as I mentioned earlier, sort of a drama critic. We tell you which companies are doing well and why, which are not doing well and why. In that sense, our stories have a lesson. There's always a moral in those stories. And so our ability to use numbers, we have the best databases. We know how to find numbers. We know how to read balance sheets better than anyone else. And we also then focus on lifestyle. You achieve, when you start to achieve success, you start to generate more income. What do you do with that income? How do you live the better life? And so we're helpful there. So the whole aspect, achieving a good life, living a good life, but also I keep emphasizing that life is not a straight line. Success is not a straight line. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to may have failures. You take Steve Jobs, who was fired from his own company before the age of 30, before he came back. So, but the key thing is, if you keep going, if you understand your purpose, you can still climb up.
Books like, for example, How to Be a Billionaire is one of the most sold books, talking about billionaires and their lifestyle and their numbers, and is always inspiring for people. Is this also one of the Forbes messages to the whole people? And what is the main purpose of having a list of billionaires?
Well, people like to see who has done well, what areas they've succeeded in, and how they did it. And what's amazing about our lists of people who've done well, whether it's here in the United States, what we call the Forbes 400, or our Global Billionaires issue, is how much it changes each year. It's not fixed. There's a high turnover. So you look at our first issue back in 1982 in terms of our first what we call rich list here in the United States. Very few of those names are there today. The first issue is full of Rockefellers and DuPonts. Well, David Rockefeller recently died. No DuPonts, no Rockefellers. So it's that dynamism, that key thing, up and down, is something that's very important to understand. It's not fixed. Wealth is not fixed. And we've seen time and time again. Look, our three great auto companies, two of them filed for bankruptcy. And but the key thing is you keep getting new players coming along.
But how does that goes with the saying that it's so big to fail? Or there's certain companies
this is where if you go against free market principles, then you distort the economy. If a company becomes too big to succeed, that's another way of looking at it, it should be changed or broken up. And you look at some of the big companies today, they didn't exist 20, 25 years ago. Google, Facebook, Netflix, and the like. They're new ones, and one of the aspects, certainly of the American economy, is the ability each generation to develop a whole new set of companies that become large companies.
Let me talk about credibility. You said that you mentioned criminals in your answer in a different phase, but Pablo Escobar have been in one of the lists, and one of our guests in this season is his son, which said that you've mentioned that his fortune is 13 billion, which is truly 3 billion. Let us talk about credibility in general, and as an example, how is it truthful, the information there in Forbes?
Well, we've refined over the years finding sources of information. Obviously, there's a lot of information filed with regulatory agencies around the world, public disclosures. You talk to competitors, you talk to those who know them, and oftentimes the people themselves will cooperate. Some won't, some will. Some say we're worth more, some say we're worth less. Donald Trump always believes we underestimate his wealth.
You said that in 2011. You told him, we underestimated you.
He's always saying that. It's a constant. And we think, though, we've been very careful in evaluating properties. And we also, you have to show us that the wealth is real in the sense that it's not enough to say my brand is worth a lot. You have to monetize. We count what you monetize, not just the value of the brand, but what you monetize. We do with Oprah. Her name is worth a lot.
You're right.
But you have to monetize it, make it a reality, not just something on a piece of paper or in your mind, but a reality. And over the years, Donald Trump, after he had those huge setbacks in the early 1990s where he nearly went down, gradually increased his wealth. So he's 3 to 4 billion. He thinks it should be more, but most people think that's pretty good.
Many face problems financially, even you, sir. Some reports say that even some people took advantage of certain phases of your time, of your life. You were forced to sell some of your assets in a lower evaluation, such as I forget the name of the website. It was one of your own. You sold it for 39 million, and many believed that it was underestimated in 2009. Do you remember that?
We've sold some of the art pieces.
It was your website, I think, Investopedia.com.
Investopedia, yeah, we bought it.
39.6 million.
We bought it and then sold it because it didn't meet with our strategic plans. But every vibrant company is constantly changing on how you do things. And you look at where we are today, you look at our website. 7 years ago, we had 10 million visitors. Now we have about 5 to 6 times as many. So if you stay still, you stagnate. It's like riding a bicycle. If you don't move, you will fall over. And selling some art objects, which my father loved, some of us have different interests. So the key thing is, though, when you see the environment change, you adjust to it and continue to serve your purpose, serve your readers, serve your online visitors, and then you can achieve success. We have made the best transition, I'll say this, the best transition from a print publication than any other print publication. You look at Business Week, now owned by Bloomberg. You look at Fortune, withering on the vine. I mean, we've done well. So, but the key thing is, and this is what makes business times when you wonder if you're going to make it, is there's no playbook when something big new comes along. There's no, like we used to say in this country, paint by the numbers. Here's what you do. You have to figure it out on your own. That's why there's this saying, you can eat well or sleep well, but not both.
You're right. Or are you wrong? It's not possible to do them both?
If you're going to, the idea is that if you're going to be competitive, you can never get relaxed. My father liked to say, if you think you've arrived, you're ready to be shown the door.
Wow.
And you've seen companies look at Kodak. Until a few years ago, Kodak was this great brand, worldwide success. And they sort of saw digital technology coming along, but they didn't know how to respond. Look at them today, Polaroid and others.
I'd like to go into politics, and I'd like to take some of your answer as a piece to start with this subject. The cell phone was invented in Israel, and as we know, Israel has a very few population, and it has not many years ago it's a country. Many countries, even my country, don't believe that it's a country yet. We don't take it as a country, but still it has an influence on the world. So how is it powerful? How does countries gain their power? Is it by invention? Is it by economics? What do you say for those small countries or those young people in small countries in the Middle East that they want their country to be stronger, to have a huger influence on the world? What do you see the way for that?
One is removing barriers to business, whether it's low taxes, not having an oppressive tax system, having a sound currency, making it easy to set up a legal business. The World Bank each year has a survey called Doing Business. And it's amazing how many countries around the world make it very difficult to set up a legal business. You have to have the rule of law. So if a new company comes along that challenges an existing company, it's allowed to do so. It's not crushed. Mm-hmm. And so those things are critical. But the key thing in all of this is to recognize the true source of wealth is the human mind. And so you've mentioned Israel. They prize knowledge there. That's why this small country's become a high-tech powerhouse. But if you recognize the beauty of the human brain and create an environment where that brain can be developed through trial and error, you will move up, you will move ahead. There's no reason why experts thought that Asia would never go anywhere. After World War II, people thought Japan would have a tough time forever and that other Asian countries would stay poor forever. Well, look what Japan did. Look what South Korea did starting in the 1960s, devastated by the Korean War. So the key thing is, if we have an environment that is not hostile to knowledge and the creation of knowledge, you can create wealth.
You're right. Mentioning Japan, yes, they did a huge achievement after World War II, but even though knowing that many of your morals that you believe in business and in economy is there, exist in Japan, they're doing not that good job in the last 20 years. They're going from worse to worse to worse. How do you see that?
Well, let's look at what Japan did. After World War II, especially in the 50s and 60s, it cut taxes every year. Mm-hmm. It removed barriers every year. And so they made sure that government spending was restrained. And because of the prosperity they created, their government revenues went up, but the national wealth went up. Then starting in the 80s, they forgot, talk about knowledge, what they had done before. So they started raising taxes. The government started to waste money on infrastructure projects that had no real value. They started playing with the value of the yen, and so they stagnated. Germany was going nowhere after a great boom. They forgot the lessons. Then in the late 90s, early 2000s, they made some few internal reforms, and they started to move up again. Britain was called the sick man of Europe in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. Then along come the Thatcher reforms, reducing barriers to people. And Britain went from the sick man of Europe to the most dynamic large economy in Europe. You take Ireland, for centuries, the poorest economy in Western Europe. Yes. Then they started to make big reforms, inviting businesses in, developing internally, playing on their great educational system. And they went from the poorest country in Western Europe to the most vibrant country. And even when they were hit hard in 2008, slammed on the ground, they came back. They came back faster than Greece or Portugal or Spain or the others who were hit hard because they'd made those reforms. So, you look at Ireland, you look at Singapore. What was Singapore? Poor place. Look at Hong Kong 60 years ago, still today, no natural resources, and created, had to import its own water. So you mentioned Malaysia. These countries come up. So you may be here today, but there's no reason why you can't be there tomorrow.
خاض ستيڤ فوربز منافسة على رئاسة أمريكا لمرتين، وبالمرتين وصل نهائيات تصفيات انتخابات حزبه الجمهوري، إحداهما كانت ضد الرئيس جورج دبليو بوش. السؤال ليس لماذا فقط خاض هذه المنافسة لمرتين، بل لماذا كسر الأرقام القياسية في التمويل الذاتي لحملته الانتخابية بمبلغ تجاوز 69 مليون من جيبه الخاص. Let's talk pure politics. You wanted to be the president. Why?
It wasn't a plan. I was at the time in the early 1990s heading up an organization, sort of a think tank reform organization,
Yes.
headed by, founded by Jack Kemp, political figure at the time, Bill Bennett, and the late Gene Kirkpatrick. And we all thought, this was in the mid-90s, that Jack Kemp was going to run for president again.
Yes.
And then he called us in one day and said he's not running. We were stunned. So I began to look around. Who else out there had this kind of optimism and belief in people that Ronald Reagan had, that Jack Kemp had, and wanted to remove barriers in a vigorous way, not be constrained by conventional wisdom? Didn't find anyone. And so instead of complaining, all right, try it yourself.
But you wanted it more than any other, because in 2 times you spent it and you break the record with $69 million out of your own money to support your own campaign. Please don't tell me that your father spent $5 million on his birthday. This is an answer that you've used before. Why do you want it this much? Why do you think that you'll do different for your country as a president?
Well, you seek an office like that, at least in my mind, not for your resume, not to live a better life. You don't when you go into politics, but to make changes that are needed to maximize the opportunity for people having a better life. And in this country, we have this hideous income tax code, which is over, when you look at all the rules and regulations with it, is over 10 million words. It's a source of complexity and corruption. I wanted to get rid of it, put in a simple, flat tax, generous exemptions for adults and for children. In this country, for example, if we had it, family of 4, the first $52,800 would be free of federal income tax, only 17 cents on the dollar above that. And we would throw out all of those unnecessary complexity, all that unnecessary complexity. And it's a moral issue. You look at the last 20 years, our own tax collectors estimate that we Americans spend 6 billion hours a year filling out tax forms. We spend, experts estimate, over $200 billion a year complying with this monstrosity that nobody understands. So imagine, going back 20 years, if all those resources, tens of billions of hours, literally trillions of dollars, all that immense brain power, remember this is the source of wealth, have been applied to new products, new services, new medical devices, new cures for diseases, how much all of us would be better off today. So those are issues that I was interested in. I think we're starting to make some progress on it. And by the way, in the last 20 years, over 30 countries around the world have adopted this kind of tax system.
You're right. But still, you tried twice. Why do you think you lost?
Didn't get enough votes. And a lot of it's timing. You have to have the propitious time, the right time. Take Donald Trump. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, if he had run for president 4 years ago, he thought he would win, but I don't think he would have. He almost ran 15 years ago, in the year 2000, 18 years ago. And if he had run, he would have lost. So his timing was right.
We were nosed out by a landslide. But I have no regrets, and you shouldn't either. For together, you and I have transformed the public agenda, the political landscape. Together, we have created a new conservative agenda, and that agenda will come to pass. Mark my words.
You supported Donald Trump, am I right?
I supported the Republican nominee, so when he got the nomination, I supported him. I think he's done far better than his opponent would have done.
Okay, then if we asked, you said that if he was in the race years ago, he wouldn't have the chance. Why do you think now it's different? Why do you think that Trump won the election this time?
Because the U.S. had been through a decade of relative economic stagnation, where people felt that the opportunity to move ahead was not there anymore. They couldn't understand why. They also felt that the leaders in this country, what we call the elites, were out of touch with what people were thinking, that the elites disdained them, the elites didn't talk to them, which is why Trump, a billionaire, did so well in areas that the Democrat Party usually did well in Appalachia, and among union workers. The feeling was something was wrong with the country, and he clearly was not part of the political establishment. And so because he stood out more than any other candidate, he beat all of these professional politicians.
When did you feel the moment where, yes, he had the chance to win?
Well, when it became clear that his opponents, he had 16 opponents for the Republican nomination, some with very impressive resumes. None of them really changed their strategy when he rose up. Now in business, if you do that, you go bankrupt. In politics, you lose the election. They didn't change, they didn't respond. They made some little changes, but they never really knew how to respond to the rise of Donald Trump. So in essence, even though he's a Republican, he's really a third party. First really outsider who won the presidency in this country. Some call it the hostile takeover of the Republican Party. He was the outsider.
You are a big believer of democracy, of course. You've been there and you practiced democracy in all aspects. Let me ask you this question. Many believe that it wasn't democracy having Trump winning this chair. Why is that? Because of the systems that is here in the elections. Clinton won with 3 million more votes. How do you see democracy in the country? Is really Trump representing the people?
That's how he won the election. We have certain rules in this country in terms of, this is what goes back centuries, in terms of carrying different states. If it was just a straight popular vote, the candidates would run very different campaigns. They'd pay no attention to states like Nebraska or Wyoming or anything else, or Iowa. They'd just focus on the big ones. So the system we had, everyone knew what the rules were, and Hillary Clinton thought she didn't need to campaign in Wisconsin. She thought it was hers. Same thing in Michigan, same thing in Pennsylvania. Trump campaigned vigorously in those areas. And so she knew what the rules were. She played by them and lost by them.
في عام 2013 أخذ ستيڤ فوربز قرار كان مفترق طرق لأسرة فوربز بالكامل، حيث تخلت عن 51% من حصتها في الشركة لمستثمر من هونغ كونغ بقيمة 400 مليون دولار. كان لابد من التساؤل، ما هي ماهية ومستقبل الشركة بعد هذا القرار؟ Talking about decisions, you said that politicians or other candidates didn't took the right decision, and if it was business, then they're bankrupt, but because it's politics, they lost the votes. You took a huge decision in 2013, going back to Forbes, and by selling 51% out of the company for $400 million.
For how much?
$400 million, am I right?
No, but not bad figure.
Then what is the better figure that you can mention?
That's the virtue of being a private company.
Okay, then let's say $400 million. What was the reason, and how would that reflect the future of your family business?
Well, we have members of the family who have other interests other than the business, and some of them wanted liquidity. We also wanted liquidity capital for the company to continue to move ahead, continue to move around the world. We have, as you know, 38 licensed editions around the world, a number of websites around the world. We're moving in areas like education, the financial part of the world, in terms of real estate. So that doesn't come for free.
التساؤلات كثيرة، لكن هناك تساؤل مستحق. كيف لواحد منا أن يصل لقائمة أسرة ضيفنا الشهيرة؟ كيف لشخص يبتدئ مشواره العملي ويريد أن يصل بالنهاية لهذه القائمة العالمية. هل فعلا هذا التساؤل مستحق؟ هل فعلا لهذا السؤال جواب؟ هل فعلا تكمن السعادة في الوصول لهذه القائمة؟ I've asked one of the team member here that he just currently joined. I told him I'm meeting Forbes tomorrow. What do you know about Forbes? He told me about the list, of course. I told him, when was the last time you saw the list? So he told me 3 days ago. I told him, how did that list reflect on you? He said, well, I'm not angry about the list. It doesn't affect, it's a news. I wanted to ask you, why is it, I know that I've said it before, but why is it really important, or how is it relevant to always see who's in the top 10 or top 40?
Well, one, people are curious who's doing well, and they want to know why. And what it reflects is the dynamism of this economy. How did they do so well? What area did they do it in? How did they achieve it? You take, for example, Starbucks, Howard Schultz. Coffee is the most common commodity in the world.
You're right.
And every country that can grow it grows it. Anyone can make it. Even the airlines still serve a version of it for free.
Yes.
And so how do you take this commodity and make it into a multi-billion-dollar global business?
You're right.
It's extraordinary.
You're right.
So it's not just high tech, it's in all different areas.
You're right. You've mentioned Starbucks. We're planning to meet Bihar, which is the previous president of Starbucks, which said it's not simply a coffee, it's beyond coffee. Many don't find it easy. Of course, they don't find it easy to understand. What is the way to be part of Forbes list? Is there an equation that...
If there was an equation, we'd all be on it. The fact is, it's an art. And you mentioned Starbucks. One, they had consistently, the quality was there, but also they recreated at least a modern version of the old Milanese or Austrian Viennese coffee house. And they didn't throw you out. You know, restaurants always want turnover, and so they try to shove you out after a while. They don't like you hanging around. Starbucks, you can go in and just hang around all you want, sipping your coffee or your latte. And they came up with new products related to it. You go there today, infinite varieties of coffee. I mean, we take, for example, the word latte for granted today.
Yes.
15 years ago, no one had ever heard of a latte. And now today, people stand in line, say venti latte, pay $20 for this commodity, and it's a fantastic business, big margins.
Now, what makes a businessman in your age and in your experience, all those wars that you've been in, whether it's your company or even elections that huge, what makes you come every day to the office? We asked the receptionist, she told us that you spend around 6 hours daily here in the office. What makes you every day go into Forbes' office?
Well, one of the nice things is with high technology, you can spend hours in the office, but you can work most of the day, which with the devices is very easy to do. And I travel a lot as well. Mm-hmm. But the key thing is motivation, is the love of the business, curiosity. How do things happen? How do people do things? And constantly coming up with new ways of doing things here. So if you don't do anything, which in some ways is the hardest job in the world, it's like muscles. If you don't use the muscles, they stagnate. If you don't use the brain, it stagnates. And so it's curiosity and wanting to keep doing things.
We're here today with a wise man, so I want to use this opportunity to ask you, what do you have as a message for a businessman and for a father in a family or a young man? What do you say for those three people?
For the young man, be glad you're young. Hopefully your health is good, but find out what you're good at. Everyone is good at something, what we call in this country a knack for something. Find out what it is. Find out an interest, at least find out what you don't like, and then pursue it. Be expected to get hit down once in a while. Life never goes smoothly. And be prepared. There's a lot of drudge things you have to do. You know, like preparing for a sporting match. A lot of exercise, no glamour, and this is what you go through and all the practice and that kind of thing. Well, that's true in business. A lot of what you do each day is not big, exciting things. It's the nitty-gritty of making sure things work. There's a little story on Ray Kroc, who did McDonald's. He was often asked, why don't you diversify into other businesses or other kinds of foods, like a fancy restaurant? He said, can you guarantee me that every restroom in these restaurants is clean and spick and span? If you can't, we're sticking to this business. That kind of detail. So you look at Steve Jobs and others. Yes, they had grand visions, but they also knew the importance of the granular, being those details that make the difference between success and failure. So that's the key thing. And if you lose that, you're done. So the young person, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try things. You're young, you have plenty of time to get back on your feet. Father with a family, well, first of all, my father liked to say, you know you're a successful parent if you become an embarrassment to your children. In other words, when they're growing up, even in the teen years, when you're telling them what they can and cannot do, don't expect them to be your friend, but you're trying to inculcate, trying to give them the values of what is right and wrong, and then have them recognize, it's amazing within families, the different varieties of personalities that come from the same parents. It's extraordinary. Same household, but very different. Recognize that, and don't expect them to try to imitate you. Don't urge them to imitate you. You tell them to develop your own ways. You'll learn your own ways of doing things, and eventually they'll come to appreciate, even if they never tell you, that you were a good parent. But always be ready to say no.
Wow, wow. I'm here in Forbes. And when we're here in Forbes, you always think about the rich. I've been with the owner of Fubu chain, which is Damon John, and I asked him, how wealthy are you? And he answered the popular answer. I'm wealthy because I have a family. I'm wealthy because I have sons and daughters. I want you to answer me honestly. When is the person rich?
The person is rich when blessed with health, and we find very successful people who have overcome physical adversities. So adversity is not something that need hold you back. You'll find a way around it, again, using that mind. And so the key thing is on all of that, key thing is on all of these things, is wealth comes from providing something that somebody else wants. Wow. Serving others. You may think you're doing it for yourself, but unless the government forces you to buy it, nobody has to buy what you're offering. And so if you have something that somebody can persuade they should part with their resources for it, that is wealth creation. They get something, you get something. It's exchange, interacting with each other. And some people have a personality where they're fun to be around. They always seem to be happy. Others, no matter what, they always seem to be grumpy. That's human nature. That's the human race. Right. So there's no one formula for what we call wealth. The key thing is what our founders of this country called the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. My grandfather said in that first issue. And those things, what gives you fulfillment may change over life, but usually you regret what you don't try. Maybe you try something, it's a disappointment, but at least you tried it.
You're right, sir. Does it mean that every single name in your list, or at least the top 10, top 20, that they're happy people? Does richness reflect
I think
happiness?
what gives them fulfillment, let's not use the word happiness because we think of that as being at a party and champagne, that kind of thing, is a sense of fulfillment. You look at Bill Gates, very successful obviously in high tech, now working to combat diseases like malaria, beginning to achieve some real success. It's a sense of making things happen. You take something that's not easy and you make it happen. That is fulfillment.
From your point of view, you've been there listing those successful people names. Sometimes we see movie stars in a screen, they look happy, they look enjoying their life. This is what we feel, ordinary people, when we see your list. How do you see that list? For us, we go wild when we see those numbers, we see those names. How do you see them, those names, personally?
Well, it's interesting. How did they do what they did? You take, for example, Jeff Bezos, now the richest man in the world, depending on the day of the week, Amazon. How did Amazon achieve this huge success? How does it keep being dynamic? No one a few years ago would have picked Amazon as being a dominant player in the cloud, but it is. It's because Bezos emphasizes teams, small groups of people doing innovative things, not weighed down by a big bureaucracy. And that he's, so far, as long as he keeps that dynamism, he'll continue to do well.
Mentioning Amazon, also remind us about Uber.
By the way,
yes.
My father also liked to say, money may not buy happiness, but it sure helps.
I agree totally. Mentioning Amazon and similar business models like Uber, like other businesses that change the way of looking to things, like Facebook, for example, or Uber or Amazon, Bitcoin, selling clothes without having a place to sell them through. It's an online thing, and they're doing huge number. They're doing billions in few years. What do you feel that is changing really in the world?
Making it easier to get nice things, get things in life, whether it's groceries. There are now services that will, if you're very busy, that'll deliver to your door at a more and more affordable cost. So it's making life better, higher standard of living. And this fear of robots is misplaced. We've been doing robots since, what was the wheel? It was the first robot that enabled us to move things more easily than just always carrying things. Washing clothes. In this country, used to have these, what they call washer boards, where you go up and down this washer board, washing the clothes. And then a robot came along and did it for you. Didn't look like a robot, it was called a washing machine.
Yes.
Just makes it easier. So these things, what we used to call labor-saving devices, just makes life, gives you not only a higher standard of living, better life, but also more opportunity to pursue your own interests. In the old days, it was just subsistence, just trying to get enough to get by each day. Now you have hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world serving you. Foods around the world, products around the world, parts around the world, all at your beck and call with your handheld.
Before giving you our gift, there is always a gift for every single power owners that we meet.
Thank you.
The guys are preparing it. But before going into that final thing that we want to talk about, you're so special as a power owner because you don't represent one industry. You always introduce us to different power owners, wealthy power owners. What makes someone wealthy better than someone else, beside the numbers?
You get the numbers by serving people better than others, getting your message across better than others. So it's that competition to please you that gives you a better life.
Thank you. A last word for the audience in the Middle East, if you don't mind. What do you tell them?
Look to the future. Don't be bound by the past. If you have a brain, you have a great future.
So this is our gift to you.
Thank you.
But it represents our whole mission. It's a ship, and we travel all over the world to meet people that has success story as yourself. So please accept this from us to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I see this as a ship that explores.
Yes, sir.
And you're exploring.
Yes, sir.
So this is very fitting.
No problem. Before ending this, what was the best gift you ever had?
other than my children.
And other than this.
And this. I think, well, when my wife said yes.
Wow. Thank you for your time, Mr. Forbes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. في بداية اللقاء استشهد ضيفنا بمقولة لجده بأن العمل يجب أن لا يكون مدعاة إلا للسعادة، لا أن يكون التركيز على المال. ولكنه لاحقا بعد مرور الوقت خلال اللقاء استشهد بمقولة أخرى، لكن هذه المرة لأبوه، والذي قال فيها بأن المال قد لا يكون الطريق الوحيد للسعادة، ولكنه حتما أحد أهم الوسائل للسعادة. قائمة فوربز إن كان لها درس كما هو يقول بأن الرقم 1 لن يكون دائما الرقم 1، ودائما من هو بالقاع له فرصة كبيرة للوصول للقمة. شكرا على المتابعة.